Hello, everyone. This handsome gentleman in the background is my husband's cat. He doesn't like me very much, so I don't see as much of him as the other cats. You won't see as much of him as the other cats, but I don't know. He's a sweetheart. He likes to scratch me a lot. Raymond, can I pet you? Hi. Oh, okay. He's being nice today. Um, if there are a lot of jump cuts in this video, it's because I have yet another cold that my daughter brought home from school, and I've been coughing up a lung. And I'm losing my voice as well, so I'm sorry. I probably don't sound so good. Um, this is what happens when you send your first kid off to school. Like, you get all the colds and all the flus and all the different every little bug they pick up, all of a sudden it just goes rampant through the house. It's like the plague. But I thought today it might be kind of fun and interesting to talk about something that a lot of people assume about dancers and a lot of people assumed about me, which I think was incorrect. But it made for some interesting discussions with a lot of people through the years. And that was the idea that, well, actually, it was a series of ideas. It's a series of stereotypes about strippers that are just kind of, there's a reason the stereotypes exist, but they might not necessarily apply to me. And one of them was that I had daddy issues. One of them was that I became a stripper to get back at my parents for something. Um, those are the two main ones that I can think of. But a lot of guys who I would talk to had this kind of pre-existing assumption that these are things that just all strippers have. Like, oh, so of course you did this to get even with your parents, right? And I think it's funny because in that particular issue, it's like when you're dealing with your subconscious, like this, the idea is that you don't necessarily know what's motivating you to make certain decisions. Like, I think that's kind of the idea. And so people who look at it and say, well, maybe you were subconsciously doing it, they're like, oh, yeah, well, maybe you were doing it because of this, but you didn't even really know it or you didn't even realize it. And the problem with that is, I thought about becoming a dancer for a long time. I wasn't legally allowed to enter a bar until I turned 21. I wanted to do exotic dance long before I turned 21. I just didn't have any access to a bar where I could do it. And I wanted to try it, and I had like a million reasons why I wanted to try it, and I thought about it very carefully for a very long time. I wanted to do it to get back into shape. I wanted to do it to learn how to socialize with other people. I wanted to do it because my dating pool was ridiculously small. I wanted to do it because I was hoping that maybe eventually I'd find some friends that I wouldn't be alone all the time anymore. I wanted to do it because my life wasn't necessarily going anywhere. I didn't have any good options available to me. I couldn't get into a nice college. My early life was pretty messed up. Like, everything before high school was sort of really messed up. And a lot of people look at that and say, okay, well, that was your fault, or maybe you lived in a bad home with a bad family, or, you must have gotten into drugs or something early. And it was like, no, I had a health condition that was really out of control, and my teachers didn't believe it was real. So I nearly died at least once, possibly twice. It was a little rocky. I didn't concentrate on my schoolwork the way I should have, but then again, I was really, really sick. So how much of the how much of that was me being lazy and how much of that was me unable to do the things that I was being asked to do in school is debatable. Even if you split it 50-50, I still wasn't going to do well in school. And so, when graduation came around, I didn't have any scholarships. I couldn't get into a nice college. I ended up paying for the local college in cash for like a couple semesters before I dropped out. I couldn't join the military. My health was shattered. My body was a wreck. I used to get sick all the time. I get sick all the time now, but it's a different kind of thing. Again, when you send your kids to school, expect to have a lot of colds. But yeah, I couldn't really, all I wanted to do in my life was just get out of my little hometown and go somewhere where maybe I'd be able to find people that I could relate to better. Maybe I'd be able to, build some friendships with people and have friends because I spent a lot of time alone. And when I met other people, I didn't get along well with them. And part of that was my very, very poor social skills, which, again, becoming an exotic dancer gave me the opportunity and the means by which to improve my social skills. But also, like, I was kind of a freak. Like, my life was about trying to survive the things that were happening to me that I didn't feel like I had any kind of control over. I got sick. My teachers told me it wasn't real. I tried to pretend that it wasn't real because I didn't want to believe it was real. You get all these people around you saying, "Oh, the things that you're experiencing aren't actually happening." It's like, yeah, well, I don't want to be experiencing these things either. So maybe if I just work hard enough at focusing my mind on not believing in these things, they'll go away the same way my teachers are always telling me. Well, that didn't work out because they were real. And some things, physical things, you can look at a boulder and say, "I believe this boulder doesn't exist." And you can try to walk through it. And you can do that again and again and again and focus your mind as hard as you can on making that boulder disappear from the landscape so that you can walk straight through it. But at the end of the day, you're going to be very tired. You're going to have bruised knees because you keep walking into the damn boulder and the thing will not have moved at all. And that was me in school. I was trying to willpower away something that was physical, that was beyond my control. I could never control the way my body reacted to certain negative stimuli. It just that's what happens when you're sick. It would be very much like if you had a kid with a peanut allergy and you kept feeding them peanut butter and jelly sandwiches and telling them to just keep eating the peanut butter and jelly because as long as, if you just eat enough of it, it will all go away. If you just focus on that peanut butter not causing that allergic reaction, not causing your throat to swell up, eventually it will just go away. Like that was my childhood. And that's actually not a bad analogy. Peanut allergies tend to be very acute and very deadly. What I had was very acute and occasionally life threatening. How many incidents were life threatening? Well, that's debatable. At least probably about two. Two of them were definitely life threatening. And like you don't get to be a grade A student when you get out of that. Maybe if you've got good friends and you got a supportive family and you got a good social network, maybe then. But I didn't have any of those things either. I didn't have a strong social network. I didn't have much extended family. I didn't really have much support from anybody in my life. I came out of school and I was a train wreck, and I've said that before and I'll say it again. I was a fucking train wreck when I got out of public school. And I was too broken to do anything that would get me out of my hometown. So I was stuck there and I felt stranded. I felt marooned. And I kept on coming up with crazier and crazier ways to get out of it. And nothing worked until I became a dancer. Nothing helped me until I became a dancer. And then once I became a dancer, all these different opportunities came to me through strange back channels that I never would have expected. Like, I didn't become a dancer to make money. I heard that dancers can make money, but I thought, well, that's for the girls who look like Playboy models. I look like me. I'm not going to make that kind of money. And I was shocked when I made, like, God, $275, $300. I think it was $300 on my first night. I was shocked. Like, I didn't see that coming. I didn't see that happening at all. And so all of a sudden, maybe I could travel somewhere else. Maybe I could save up a nice little fund for myself to travel somewhere far away from this place that I'd grown up, that I hated, where I was lonely and I didn't have anyone to confide in and I didn't have anyone that I trusted. It's like, isn't that reason enough to be a dancer? You can start working on your broken health. You can start rebuilding your social skills so that you actually have working social skills. You can maybe find some friends so that you're not alone all the time. You can maybe even get the hell out of the shithole you're stuck in. You don't need more reasons than that. But, I mean, so many people I've talked to, well, you must have at least kind of wanted to get even with your parents. It's like, no, No, I really didn't. I didn't want to get even with my parents. Nobody's gonna believe that, but that's what it was like. I've had a lot of people asking me if I have daddy issues, which how the hell am I supposed to know what daddy issues even are? It's like, did I have a rough childhood? Oh yeah, I had a rough childhood. Did I have the kind of rough child people tend to think about when they think of a rough childhood? No, no. I didn't have drug addicted parents. I didn't grow up in poverty or squalor. I had a nice, normal, middle class, lower middle class kind of life. Um, my parents were pretty normal people. Well, my parents were of above average intelligent and very eccentric, but they weren't bad people. And if you look at that from the outside, it would be like, well, you didn't have a very rough life. But then you kind of have to take into account all the nights that, all the days that I would go to school and I get so sick. And then I would be told that I was imagining it all. Just get back up again and keep going. All the times that I put everything that I had into doing all the tasks that I was told to do, and nothing I tried, nothing I worked at was ever good enough because I didn't have the strength or the energy to keep going. I remember there was this one time we were supposed to do a mile run in middle school, and I I really wanted to do better that time. Like I always tried very, very hard not to be the last kid to finish the mile run. That was the best I could hope for. It's like I was so weak and I was so sick that if I really, really, really pushed as hard as I could, sometimes I wasn't the last kid to finish the mile run. And so I worked my ass off. I worked so hard and I was really, really sick. And the medicine just, it wasn't even touching what was going on with me. It wasn't making any kind of a dent in it. But I was trying as hard as I could. And I ran and I ran and I ran and I worked as hard as I possibly could. And there was one kid in front of me and I was like, if I can just get past that kid, then I'll be okay. And I remember we got up toward the end and she was ahead of me and I started just pushing with everything I was worth. Like, I just need to be in front of that kid so that I'm not the last kid finishing this. And I mean, she was like, I don't even know how many yards ahead of me. She was like, God, half a football field ahead of me. She was, yeah, half a football, like, maybe, well, not a full football stadium, but like a middle school football field, because that was how far ahead she was. She got all the way, like, across the finish line, and I was still panting and gasping and running as hard as I could, and I finally got across. And the teacher just looked at me like, well, you're going to have to try harder next time, maybe. And she had no idea that I put everything I had into it. And we got back from our run. We went into the changing room. And I went into the bathroom and I locked the door. And I just sat on the toilet and cried because I hurt so bad. And people think, when you run, you hurt. Like, there's this sore lung feeling that you get when you run a lot. And you're breathing really hard and your lungs start to hurt. I felt that once in my life. When I was like 27 or 28, my husband was at the far end of the apartment complex and he had, like, his key had broken or something, or he'd forgotten his key or something. I can't remember. And I ran all the way across the apartment complex to give it to him so he wouldn't be waiting around. And I mostly ran that distance because I wanted to see what it was like to run when you weren't ill. And it's a weird feeling, like, that sore lung feeling that you get, kind of at the bottom of your lungs. That's the only time I ever felt that. Back when I was in school, the feeling I got was very different because I never got the chance to feel that feeling. I had other feelings that were very painful and very unpleasant. And that was because my body just wasn't coping with the kind of strain I was putting it through. And then I would be told that it was all in my head. It was all imaginary. If you just push hard enough, it will go away. And so I was sitting in the bathroom and I ached all over and I could, I was in bad shape and I was crying. And eventually the teacher comes, like the bell rang and I didn't get to the next class. And I was like, well, crap. And I just sat there crying because I could barely move. I didn't feel good. And eventually the teacher, like someone got the teacher and had her come over, and everybody else left for their next class. And the teacher, got me out and told me to stand a certain way because that was supposed to make it better, which it didn't, by the way. It didn't. And, to drink some water because that would make it better. Because, I guess that's what happens with runners, but I wasn't a runner. I was just a really sick kid. And then she, sent me off to class, and I went into class, and I think she gave me like a late note so that I didn't get in trouble. And I think that was the day that I ended up in the hospital. I ended up in the ER that night, I think. I'm pretty sure that was the day. I never got better. I just kept on spiraling downward and downward and downward. And I think I ended up going home sick that day, which I was really ashamed of because it was all in my head. I wasn't supposed to be having this problem. I went home sick and I lay in bed, I think most of the day, and then come close to midnight, I started feeling really not so good, and by that point I'd gotten into pretty dangerous territory. uh, and they took me to the ER, and that's when I had some very interesting treatments that I really really liked. And my doctor explained to my mom that I could have slipped into a coma and died. And that was the first slip into a coma and die conversation. But I got a bad grade, And I didn't do so well in the other classes I attended that day before I went home because I was completely defeated. Because everything I had put into it, like every last resource that I had, everything. I threw everything I had at that goal, that very simple goal that all the other kids were having like no problem completing. And it wasn't nearly close to good enough. And I was still being graded on the same level as all the other kids. So it was like all these other kids, their average, they're going on about here. And then there's you. You must just not be trying very hard because you're all the way down here. And it was impossible to keep up. And so eventually, I just learned it's impossible. These are goals that you're never ever going to achieve. These things that other people expect of you that are normal things, well, that's not you. You're never going to make it. And on the one hand, that's a horrible thing to teach a child, and on the other hand, it made me tough. I got kind of tough as a result of all that. And if I want to do something, there's not much that can dissuade me. Because all I know is failure. And if all you know is failure, then it's not like the fear of failure is really going to stop you from doing all that much. Some days, every once in a while, you have things you get nervous about. But generally speaking, I try a lot of crazy stuff and I succeed at it because I just keep failing until I succeed. That's all I do anyway. I just fail a lot. And because I fail a lot, I succeed. In the sense that I just don't stop trying. But yeah. After all that, with all those problems growing up, do I have daddy issues? Fuck if I know. I have no idea. What the hell are daddy issues to begin with? And also, does it have anything to do with my father? Because he and I are on pretty decent terms. We have our issues. We have the things we argue about, but doesn't everybody? I don't know. Like, my relationship with my parents isn't great, but I didn't do anything in my life to get even with them, and also, I don't know, this whole daddy issues things just seems weird. Like, how does that have anything to do with me becoming a dancer? Like, even if I have them, what does that have to do with me becoming a dancer? Like, I don't know. But the thing about the subconscious is everybody's going to assume that the reasons you state for doing the thing you did can't possibly be the actual reasons you did the thing that you did. even though, I don't know, they seemed like pretty good reasons to me at the time. Other stupid things I've done? Oh, I need to make a video about that. I need to make a video about the other stupid things that I did before I became an exotic dancer. And I think I'm going to make that one for. I think that might be my next video, actually. That might be my next video. Stupid shit Barbara did in order to try and get out of her hometown before eventually becoming an exotic dancer, because exotic dancer was not my first attempt to get out. But anyway, I think that's everything. I will talk to you guys later. Oh, and Merry Christmas. This is like my last video before Christmas, so have a Merry Christmas, and I'll see you guys probably the day after.